what's up you guys, this is Rob from the Gay Guy Plays, and we are so close to finishing, so we're gonna playtest the changes they made to Excalibur, Trinity, Mirage, Valkyr, and Mesa. When we do it, raw. Okay, so disclaimer time. My feelings are all over the place on some of these changes. Parts of me agree because certain mechanics were just too much. Parts of me disagree because I think that they may have taken a few things too far. But I'm totally conflicted because I understand what the intent behind most of them were. So as of now, I'm just gonna say, this is the way it currently is. It does not mean that this is the way it will always be, as DE is constantly making changes, as you can see. While sharing constructive criticism, aka statements that don't use words like crap, bullshit, nerf, and other assorted expletives, is a great way of giving your feedback, we as players should not be so narrow-minded that we can't attempt to adapt and evolve. Because let's face it, if you're actually good at the game, you can always find an avenue to get done what you need to get done. So let's get started with Excalibur. His big change is the fact that the damage of his blade waves now decrease the further they travel. Now, I had to use Radial Blind to lock the enemy in place, so keep in mind that these numbers are with an unmodded melee weapon, but are experiencing the 4x stealth multiplier. At 2 meters, because apparently that's the closest I could get, I was doing about 3,500 points of damage. At 10 meters, I was dealing approximately 2,800. At 20, it dropped down to 1,900. And at 30, it came down to about 900. At 40 meters, I could barely hit the fuckers accurately, but when I did, it was for less than 100. Now, basically, this means that you lose approximately 25% of your damage for every 10 meters you are away from an enemy. So at 10 meters, you're doing about 75% damage. At 20, you're only at half mast. And at 30, you're doing approximately 25% of your original damage. Honestly, I don't think this is all that bad. Excalibur is supposed to be a swordsman, not a blade wavesman, and frankly, you get auto parry and blind, so getting up close and personal shouldn't be an issue. Now, speaking of blinding, his slide attack that acts like a 7-meter mini radial blind now costs half the energy of your actual radial blind. Personally, I am not super fond of this, mainly because if I want to blind an enemy, I just blind them. I don't want to have to pay extra if I decide that I want to be stylish and slide on in, but I guess being all fancy like costs in-game and in real life as well, so as it stands, it is what it is. Moving along, we take a look at one of the most controversial reworks. Trinity's Blessing has lost its global range. It now works off of affinity range, which sits at 50 meters. When grouped, you'll see a lotus icon to the left of your health bar that displays the number of allies that are currently in range. In addition, the damage reduction portion of the ability no longer works off of the most damaged player in the group. It now works off of the average health that is missing across all players on the team. Basically, this means that if you're a solo Blessing Trinity, you'll still be rocking that 99% damage reduction. However, if you're on a team that's completely fine and you nuke yourself down to 2 health, you'll only be granting the team a 43% damage redux. Now, for those of you who weren't around for its original incarnation, Blessing used to be a global heal that instead of providing damage reduction would just grant you invincibility. So people went ahead and modded her for duration and basically made their team untouchable for the entire mission. Now, this wasn't necessarily the intent behind the ability, so DE implemented a few changes, making the skill a bit more reactionary. And then, because some of us are min-maxers, we found a way to basically replicate the same effect as the original with a little extra effort. Again, it wasn't DE's intention for teams to run around invincible, being able to do whatever they wanted with whatever frames and weapons they wanted. So as much as it sucks, it's not like this change should be a surprise to anybody. Now, I'm not saying it was the right change, and I'm not saying it's the wrong change. I'm just saying that they didn't want us to do something, then we found another way to get away with it, then shocker, they took it away from us again. Now, speaking of calls that were coming down the pipe, Mirage's prism now works with line of sight. It will only damage and blind enemies that the prism itself can see, instead of every single thing that falls within its range. Now, clearly you can still toss prism over cover and get enemies that you personally don't have line of sight of, but your prism does. Honestly, this one felt totally fair. All other blinding abilities are limited in the exact same way. Now, to compensate, they have bumped up its damage a little. In addition, they've also increased the damage and detonation range of all objects that can be booby trapped by sleight of hand. Now, I'm not sure who really cares about this or even regularly uses it, but I'm sure it's fun and entertaining. Okay, the next one is quite close to my heart, so I was a bit concerned when Valkyr was put up on the chopping block. But admittedly, this one is not as bad as it sounds. Hysteria's energy cost now ramps up the longer you stay in it, up to a cap. There's an indicator on the ability icon at the bottom right of your screen that will display the percentage to its cap. Up in the top corner by your health bar, you'll see a red icon that shows how much damage Hysteria has absorbed. Note that the longer you're in Hysteria, the less you will mitigate the damage displayed. Now, from personal experience, as long as you're paying attention to your surroundings, this isn't the hardest thing to avoid, because you'll only be inflicted with hysteria damage under one circumstance: if an enemy is within the 20-meter ring and has line of sight on you when hysteria is deactivated. Now, clearly, you can just go on and kill everything, then refresh hysteria, or just go and hide where no one can see you and refresh it then, or just run to safety and toggle it off and on. Either way, you have a lot of options to dodge the penalty. Now, a couple things to note. Just as long as you're modded for efficiency and duration, the energy drain is nothing major. And for those curious, the damage you deal to yourself if you intentionally turn off hysteria in the middle of battle does not trigger the energy restore on rage. Trust me, that was the first thing I checked for. Honestly, I felt like we dodged a bullet on this one, but don't go around saying that I said that. Last but not least is Mesa. Now, first off, Shooting Gallery got an awesome change. While the buff still rotates between teammates, Mesa will always keep an instance of Shooting Gallery for herself as well, which I absolutely love because I'm a selfish bastard and couldn't care less what the fuck it's doing with my teammates. And speaking of things I love, the Peacemaker Changes are finally here! Mods equipped on your secondary weapon will now affect Peacemaker's damage. This includes all non-weapon specific mods like those from Syndicates, and all non-triggered buff mods like Hydraulic Crosshairs. I even went ahead and tested this with sharpened bullets to see if I could activate the buff, then go into Peacemaker and take advantage of the critical damage bonus. However, it did not carry over. One of the things that I did want to note is that while I can't accurately determine Peacemaker's critical chance, which is fairly high, its base critical multiplier is 3 times, so I definitely suggest having primed pistol gamut as well as a primed target cracker equipped on your secondary. And if you're curious about my Mesa build, I'll be tossing it up in the end card, so be sure to check that out. So that about does it for the reworks. There is talk about fiddling with Limbo's third ability, which I fully support because it's a bit boring, as well as Ash's Blade Storm, which honestly is long overdue. Now again, keep in mind that all of this was released on Friday, and DE is notorious for coming up with additional tweaks after a big rework. So if there's something you're not the fondest of, I'd suggest leaving constructive criticism in the forums. Not here because it does nothing here. Literally, if you're gonna post a big old paragraph of feels, put it in a place where it'll do some good, because I sure as hell ain't sending it to anyone. So, until next time, stay educated as fuck.